right, good evening. I'm going to call to order the Town of Haymarket Planning Commission work session for Monday, December 21, 2020. Roll call, please.
Ware?
Here.
Mason?
Here.
Cottle?
Here.
Hallett?
Here.
Terrell? Ayush? Bayene? Alexander, can you hear me? Okay. Alexander's here.
Yeah, I'm here.
Okay. Okay.
All right, ma'am, you're up.
Okay, so tonight we're here at our work session to discuss the zoning text amendment. So we have sent the document out. This was provided to show some of the comments, feedbacks, areas of concern that myself, the Planning Commission liaison Bob Weir had, as well as the Architectural Review Board liaison Marchant Schneider also had. So this is something that the three of us had started working on earlier in the fall. It is not a request. It's come down from council that the Planning Commission work on it. And so tonight I would like to go through some of these proposed items and discussion points to see where everybody is at, what additional comments you may have. I did receive some comments from our commissioners. I did not receive some from others, so feel free, as you have information, discussion points, just jump right in. And of course, I always like saying this, there are no dumb questions, so please, if something doesn't make sense, stop us, ask us. We're trying to make this very user-friendly for our public and our community, as well as our developers and our landowners. So just jump right in and ask when you don't know kind of what we're talking about. So with that, I guess I can start the discussion unless somebody has any points they would like to jump right in on.
Why don't you just go ahead and walk us through this, what you put together.
Okay. Does everybody have the working document in front of them? I sent out a working document for us to use. Yes.
Okay.
So one of the very first items that we started going through was the definition section. We have a lot of definitions and, oh, yeah, and do you guys have the red line version?
Yes.
You do? Okay.
Did you want to take care of the purpose first, since that's got two extraneous sections in it?
Yeah, let's do that.
I think I just have the regular meeting stuff.
I'll give you just a second just to pull it up. Everybody on Zoom, do you guys have the document so that we're all on the same page together?
Here it is.
Yeah, here's the hard copy.
Okay.
Thank you.
Be easier.
Okay. Yeah.
I will take notes and edit as we go along. Okay, so the purpose here. Two of the suggestions we have to take out the protect approach slopes and other safety areas of licensed airports. That is not applicable to the town of Haymarket. I think our closest airport is Manassas, and I think we're far out of that area. Second item, provide reasonable protection against encroachment upon military bases, military installations, military airports, and their adjacent safety areas, excluding armories operated by the Virginia National Guard. Also an item that can be struck. So that leaves us with section 58-1.2, the purpose to promote the health, safety, or general welfare of the public and further accomplish the objectives of Code of Virginia 15.2-2200. This chapter is adopted as the zoning and subdivision ordinance of the town together with the zoning map. Are there any additional concerns, questions, or additions? If seeing none, I will completely strike out those two areas and move on to the next one. Okay. So the definitions section, this is one where it needs some work. We have definitions in here that do not relate back to the ordinance anywhere else. We have items in here, terms in here that are used in other counties and other jurisdictions to describe certain types of development or business uses, and these are not permitted in the town of Haymarket. So this is really a cleaning up exercise, as well as adding a couple that we've noticed are not properly included. We can go one by one. We can use the comments on the side section. You guys tell me what's the easiest to follow. We can just start at the top in the A section.
I would just
List them.
list them and say which ones you have an issue with.
Okay. Let's see. I'll just start there at the top with, so agent, no issue removing that. Aviation facility, again, that's not something that's going to happen in the town of Haymarket. Marchant has recommended retaining the cabaret adult. Recommend retaining as this distinguishes the use from other live entertainment, club uses, etc. Suggest consulting the town attorney. To me, go ahead.
Oh, go ahead.
I was going to say that's fine. We can involve the town attorney and get his opinion on that. Maybe just hold off on that discussion unless.
The point that I would make here on this particular one is one that we're going to see over and over again. The only place the cabaret is referenced in the entire zoning ordinance is in the definition.
Correct.
So
Why retain
why
it?
have it, even if you want to exempt it, why have it in there when you don't have it as a non-permissible use? It's just, like so many things in here, it just makes the code unduly long with things that don't appear anywhere in the text of the code and serve no purpose. I mean, if we ever got to the point where we were going to delineate what we didn't want or what we do want to add, for instance, if we added a cluster subdivision, then at the point in time that you did that, you could add a definition for it. But like the next two, we don't allow cluster development, so why have a definition for it?
Agreed. So with those three, I will just leave them for now marked off. I made a comment back to Marchant's comment stating just that. This is the only area in which it's referenced. Remove it altogether. Going on down, cottage. So Marchant made a side comment there. Note this corresponds to recommended removal of cottages from the R districts. Comprehensive plan policies encourage variety of housing opportunities, options, so recommend this be revisited after a comp plan update and not removed. I don't necessarily think we need to, per se, retain a cottage definition. There are not many jurisdictions that I'm aware of that really retain that exact definition. I think there are other better housing definitions that we could, if if his main comment is to get to the variety of opportunities, I think there's other definitions we can explore.
This is a hot-button topic for some in the General Assembly. It failed miserably last year. This was the, essentially a combination of the in-law suites in the backyard and in like a storage pod, or the attempt by one of the Loudoun delegates to essentially undercut zoning throughout the state by allowing you to build as many cottages or units and essentially throw out zoning of all types, or restrictions with respect to R1 and R2 and that sort of thing. It failed on a bipartisan vote very miserably, was not well received. I think leaving the cottages in there, and I'm not quite sure why it was put in there in the first place, as an addition to a, particularly in the R1 district where you're going to have a cottage in the backyard. I don't see that benefiting us from a health, safety, or land value standpoint. And the reason that this is in here for removal is to correspond with the removal of cottages as an allowable use in the R1 and the R2.
Does anybody else have any comments on that definition or any thoughts regarding it?
Where would like Airbnb fall under?
So I believe later on at the end of this document, I made a suggestion to start addressing Airbnb separate as a standalone definition in here. I don't believe that it would fall under cottage. Most of the time, when you have your Airbnbs, you're going to have the kitchen or the bathroom facilities in there. You'd have a basement, etc. So I suggest for Airbnb, for tax purposes as well, we keep it separate. Bob, can you say again, it was in R1 and R2?
I think it was in both. Might have been even more, but I'm pretty sure it was in those two.
Okay,
We'll find out in a couple of pages.
yeah. Anybody else on cottages? Okay. Dark sky lighting, strike that. Dwelling two families, so this was originally struck. I did put a comment in here, should we leave this definition since we do have several duplexes in the town? That is kind of something that we can all discuss, but yes.
I have a question about
Yes.
that, because I remember when the Lidl application at the last meeting, they were talking about those high-rise apartments. Would that be considered or is that something
No,
else?
that's a 2/2 double stack. That's a different thing entirely, and we're going to be addressing that separately.
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, so one of the things that I wanted us to really look at is all of these different dwelling types. So single family attached, single family detached. Then you have your dwelling two family, also referred to as a duplex. You have apartments, you have condos, you have multifamily housing. So we have a lot of different definitions. So, you know, making sure that they're all in there, cleaned up, and that anybody who picks this up can say, you know, that 2/2 style over there, it's vertically stacked, and I understand it to be a condo, you know, so that it reads nicely in with our ordinance, and we all know what we're talking about. So this one for now, I am going to unstrike it to leave it in here. We have several duplexes off of Jefferson Street after you cross over 66. Does anybody see an issue with leaving it in?
If we leave it in, that presumes that there's going to be some sort of allowance for it, and it's not allowed under the current zoning ordinance in any zoning district. So why define something that we don't allow or don't preclude?
Just leave it as those were at one point approvable, now it would be a non-conforming use.
We could, but I mean, there's no history of it being
Approved.
approved. I think the ones that are over there predate the zoning ordinance.
Okay. Are those the only ones in town that, those are the only ones I can think
That's the only
of?
one I can think of. And they'll get knocked down when Robinson's Paradise gets built, right?
No, they remain intact.
Okay.
I'll put a question mark beside that one, give it some thought, and we can come back to it. Okay. Moving along, entertainment establishment, adult. We have a very lengthy section in our ordinance about this. These are not permissible uses, so we can strike that out unless anybody sees a need to retain it.
What was Marchant's rationale for retaining the other one over on page 2?
His comment was, recommend retaining as this distinguishes this use from the other live entertainment, club uses, etc. Suggest consulting town attorney. So I can put another asterisk by it and we can consult. And I can ask him to further explain that one as well. Next item, fair market value. Bob, do you mind explaining why we wanted to strike this one? Marchant's only comment is issue with this definition not clear.
It's another one of these things that isn't used in the zoning ordinance, and quite frankly, I don't know that the town should be involved in determining fair market value of a property. That's, if we ever get involved in that, it's going to be in the instance of a taking or something that's going to be outside of the zoning ordinance, and yeah, I just don't think it has any business being in the zoning text, the zoning ordinance at all. It doesn't serve any purpose because it's irrelevant to us. We shouldn't be determining or asking the fair market value.
Okay. Anybody else have comments on that one?
Yeah, I don't think it should be in there either.
Okay. That's it? Okay, so the next one, full cutoff luminary, an outdoor light fixture shielded in such a manner that all light emitted by the fixture is projected below the horizontal plane. Also a type of dark sky lighting. Marchant's comment on that was see above comment about dark sky lighting. The above comment was, these are accepted industry terms to describe shielded light fixtures. I don't think it's necessary. I think later on in the lighting section, if we want to tighten up certain areas of it, we can, but right now, we do a pretty good job with what are certain levels of lighting in the residential area versus the commercial area, providing that, having the developers, ensure that they have the right photometric plans.
And again, the only place these definitions appear is
In the
in the
definitions.
definitions. There's just so much junk in here.
So I'll leave that as struck off. Golf course, unless they turn Crossroads Village into a golf course, I'm not sure where we're going to ever fit that. Again, it's not really referenced elsewhere.
Nor is it an allowable use.
Yeah. Greenway,
We don't have enough space for it, and although it's referenced in the comp plan, it's referenced, I believe, with respect to the county.
okay. Historic area.
We have a historic district, there's a better definition in here than this. This seems extraneous.
Okay,
Maybe, well, let me go to historic, let me go to the code. We have a historic district ordinance that defines that.
section 58-14.4A is the
So we've got a-
quotation from Marchant.
Yeah, we've got a historic district definition, historic resource definition, historic building, so why do we need historic area that doesn't appear anywhere else?
So maybe it's a better use of our time to,
Rely on the historic district and the
Yes.
historic resources, and rather than throwing a third extraneous definition in.
and then throughout the ordinance, ensure we refer to it as the historic district rather
Yes.
than area.
Let me see if it pops up anywhere else.
Does the definition, does it account for things that could possibly happen in the future, or we just place it in there, like during the process of building the hotel, they find that they found some architectural type stuff that becomes,
That's all covered by the historic district section, and again, yeah, like if you look at if you search historic district in the zoning ordinance, you get a whole bunch of references. If you search historic area, you get the definition and that's it.
Okay, so I will make a note to come back with a version that has historic area removed and then see if we need to add anything to a historic district.
Emily, I'm not sure if you saw my message,
Let me see.
my chat. We're having a hard time. I don't know about Ayush, but I can barely hear. Just aware.
Let me turn let me turn on my Zoom.
Okay, we're gonna take just a second. Bob's gonna turn on his Zoom so that you guys will have a better time hearing him.
Did you send me an invite?
I can forward it, 1 second.
Well, I could do the same.
Yeah, try that, Alexander. If you pull up the webcast on the town website, you'll hear it crystal clear. And then just give us a wave. Kim is watching the screen for us, and I'll pull up the chat window so I can see it next time.
Just that if you're viewing it on the website, if there's like a 30-second delay or, little delay, so.
Yeah, there's a little delay online, but just wave at us and we'll backtrack it as necessary. It's not a problem. Okay. So, historic area, I will bring back that and we'll see if we need additions to the historic district. Next, adult media. I think this kind of goes along with some of the other discussion before. I don't believe it's in there as an allowable use anywhere, so we can strike that and or get consultation from the town attorney.
Same thing with the next couple. I mean, do we really need to specify and define anatomical areas in a zoning ordinance?
No.
I don't think so, no. So that then, so moving to the next page, section 58-6.1, minimum off-street parking and loading. So one of the suggestions is to remove the shared parking, section B, or item B of that section. In review, this is not something that Katie and I typically come across. So we, in our discussion, we have been okay with that, striking it. Marchant's comment is comprehensive plan policies encourage shared parking options to address limited acreage in town for development. open space, so recommend this be revisited after a comp plan update or tweak text as necessary. I agree that might be something we need to talk about down the road. However, right now, what we've seen is most of the developers that come in, they have, for example, one of our latest ones was the BB&T building. Dr. Moon's moving his dentist office down there. He has plenty of parking for himself, for his business, and he's already working with some of his surrounding business owners to offer, during the holidays when 4 Hours Preschool does an event, they can use his parking. They come up with some of these verbal or handwritten, agreements that they can do shared parking. That's how most of the people are working through it. We typically do not have any request for actual shared parking to take place and count towards the zoning requirements. And with that, you do have to be within a certain number of feet in order for it to be ADA compliant, things of that nature. So this is not something we've run into of late.
Those instances where we have approved it in the past, it's been a horrible failure, like Winterham.
Yeah.
And it's because once it gets approved, and then they change the uses, they never come back in to address how the uses impact the shared parking, and it just creates.
And on that one, you also had the owner chose to sell off a back portion of the property, which then
destroyed the shared parking.
Right, because that new owner then blocked off the parking lot she just bought, which, you just buy a parking lot, why would you want to share it? But, yeah, we've had some issues with that. It's been more cumbersome.
With no real benefit, to be honest with you.
Right.
If we strike it, Marchant's noting you have to take out that last sentence in the prior paragraph.
Yes.
Okay.
So I will come back with a proposal to strike this and then leave a comment in there to Marchant's point. If we go in and do our comp plan update, we need to address the shared parking in there, and we possibly would need to come back and make a tweak to the zoning text amendment at that time. I think a better use of our time would be discussing with council a long-term goal and or opportunity for us to have a public parking lot, and then what that would look like for some of our businesses here in this main core area to utilize. But I think that's during our comp plan discussion that we can get to that. Okay, so I'm moving right along. If you guys don't have any comments on minimum off-street parking, myself and the town engineer will be looking at the actual breakdown in the table of how many spaces are required and making sure that we're still in keeping with other jurisdictions around us, as well as what our community needs. I'll come back to you guys if there's any changes to that. So section 58-7.2, we're now in the R1 use regulations. So this is the residential areas. Marchant's first comment here is on the accessory apartment. Comprehensive plan policies encourage a variety of housing opportunities and options, so recommend we revisit after the comp plan update. One of the items that I will share with you guys I've run into is a lot of the HOAs, the presidents are reaching out, asking how the town can help better restrict the apartments that are popping up in basements and other levels of the houses. So that is something we're getting a request for help on. I don't know if that's something we want to get into tonight to discuss, or if we want to save that for another time.
There's an easy middle ground. We take it out of the by right use and pop it down into special use. That way we have a review over it.
Okay.
Make sense to everybody?
Does that work?
You want me to add it on my version, or are you editing as you go?
I'm editing as I go.
Yeah, Prince William County is really strict on that. You can't have
Very strict.
ovens and things of that nature. I mean,
And
they
they've
catch
been,
you with it, they're gonna make you pull it out at the time of
Yes.
sale. You can get hit with violations.
we've had a couple pop up in town where they go down to the county, so they come to us and they want to do, some work in the basement, they need to go pull some permits, they say they're putting in a wet bar, we say, okay, you're showing me it's a wet bar, that's what I have to believe. They get down to the county, and then the county is requiring a full, window cut-in with the ladder escape and the lift top, because they're actually putting in dwelling units down in the basement. So then we're getting HOA issue at that point. So that's one of the things that we are running into with, I know Sherwood Forest has had some of that of recent. So,
You
I
can
just
in
heard
the
some of these
county
stories.
make application and cut an ingress egress window and increase the bedroom count of your home. The difference is, are you renting it out?
right. And I think that's where we'll want to talk about Airbnbs versus, how can we, if we want to tighten up the accessory apartment rentals, and what would need to be done within the ordinance.
Well, with the accessory apartment, we don't make any requirement for plumbing or kitchen space, do we?
Not at this time.
But it's a separate independent dwelling unit by definition.
Mhm.
How can you rent out a unit without a kitchen, or a separate independent unit without a kitchen or plumbing facilities? That's why I think I'd rather just stick, if we're gonna keep it at all, stick it in the
Special
the
use,
special use. That way we can
better monitor.
better monitor it and make requirements of any sanitary or kitchen needs.
And a lot of the times when they are rented out, we're not being notified of that being another dwelling unit. So even for fire and safety reasons, if that unit were to call the 911 system, they're also having issues with, where to find them, things of that nature. So,
Well, plus it's gotta be on a separate meter to be legal as well.
Community, one of the issues that we're facing is basically, it's obvious to us that some of the basements are being rented, but homeowners are telling us that, or telling the HOA that these are family members. And there is no lease that we know of, right, lease agreement. So it's going to be difficult to enforce for such situations, right?
right. This is another one I can also flag as, get some consult or insight from our town attorney. I'm sure he has some legal cases that he can point us to research. Okay.
Marchion's next comment, business short-term rental, that is our definition of Airbnb, and we're gonna have to come back to that at some point in the future once the General Assembly better defines it, but I think it'd be premature to do anything with it at this point.
Okay, if I can, will you keep us updated on that with the General
yeah.
Assembly? And I'll just make a note to come back to that. Are there any other uses, while we're right here, are there any other uses that anybody would like to discuss removing from the residential R1 section, the by right? So this is that bottom section of page 3.
I think, while reviewing this, I wasn't sure about some of the things in here. For example, the family health care structure, temporary. What does that actually mean?
So that is something that is, say an in-law were to, be very sick and they need health care. It might be a hospice situation, but they might not be able to stay. There couldn't be room in the house. So instead what they do now is they'll bring in a medical pod So it's, you know, a small housing unit that can be in the backyard, near the house, or it can be something that is done inside the house. And so it's all medical based. It's usually temporary because this person either only needs it for so long, or they might be so sick that they won't be with us much longer. So that's kind of the healthcare structure, temporary.
It's also mandated by the state code. I think they changed that, 2-3 years ago, where they added this as a mandatory provision.
Okay. Say that again, Alexander?
And do homeowners have to submit some sort of an application in order to set up such a structure?
Yes, and then what Bob was just adding is that it is now mandated by
State code.
the state code.
When we say temporary, I'm just curious, is there a time frame specific that, or is it based on what the need is?
It's pretty open-ended. They don't restrict it time-wise.
Did you hear that?
No, I didn't.
He said it's pretty open-ended. They do not restrict it time-wise. I think with this use, we would want to be pretty flexible in the sense that most people, when they would be asking for this, it would be a very, you know, unfortunate or sudden circumstance. I do think, however, there are other uses in here that use the word temporary that we need to tighten up what we actually mean by temporary.
One of the problems with this is, one of the reasons that they put it in here and that the state mandated it, one of the overriding concerns, as I recall from the argument, was people particularly with dementia, where you didn't know how long the condition was going to be and how long you were essentially providing elder care.
Makes sense.
Mm-hmm. Okay, if that's all, we'll move down to special uses. We can come back to the cottage. Are there any other special uses aside from the utility service major that anybody would want to see pulling from the R1? One of the ones I was going to ask is, did we want to possibly remove parking facility?
What do we define it as?
Give me just 1 second, I'm pulling that up.
Would it make sense to leave this in here for things like HOA clubhouses and that sort of thing?
Possibly. So the way it's currently defined is a site for surface parking or a parking structure use which provides one or more parking spaces together with driveways, aisles, turning and maneuvering areas, incorporated landscaped areas, and similar features meeting the requirements established by this ordinance. This use type shall not include parking facilities accessory to a permitted principal structure. So the way I interpret this is an HOA parking lot would be accessory to a permitted principal use.
Is an HOA facility a primary permitted use or an accessory use?
It's probably not defined.
Actually, it's not. You're right. Not recreation facility private. It's miscellaneous. So it would be a principal use, I guess.
Yeah, and principal use is poorly defined. The main
Well,
use of
yeah,
land,
recreation facility public is a special use, though.
and it's not technically open to the public because it's restricted only to the community. And then principal use is the main use of land or structures as distinguished from a secondary or accessory use.
Yeah, but honestly, I think we just leave it in there just to cover our bases, because it's a little unclear on the recreational stuff.
Okay.
That would be my
And
suggestion.
that's fine. I just didn't know if we would run into any issue in I was thinking more some of the R1 areas that are not under an HOA. Let's just say somebody wants to tear a house down, and this has not happened, this could be a far out there thing. Somebody along Madison Street wants to tear a house down and build a parking facility to accompany what Tobaccology already has.
It's an SUP, so they'd have to go through the
Okay.
SUP process.
Is everybody good with that? Okay. We'll keep on moving along. Okay, so we are now in the,
R2.
yes, R2. One of Alexander's, oops. So one of Alexander's questions for the R2 is for home occupation Class B, how come this might not be permitted in the R1 district? So home occupation Class B is defined as an occupation conducted primarily on site involving persons residing on the premises and not more than 2 full-time or part-time outside employees. Such occupations may require the use of an accessory structure or outside areas. No more than 10 clients or customers shall be allowed on the premises at any one time on a regular basis.
Yes, so under R1, we say that the home occupation class A is permitted by right? So shouldn't we also say, I don't know what, again, class A, I don't know how many employees would have you, but it's also possible that someone would want to put a home occupation that's class B in an R1 zoning, right, district. So that's why I asked that question.
Okay, 1 second, let me get to that section. So in the R1, we do have Class A listed as a by right use. So a Class A is when you have less than 5 clients or customers a day and you do not have any employees. So this would be a less intrusive business use for your surrounding neighbors. In most cases here in the town, you would not even really recognize that somebody's running a home office out of their home due to the very minimal amount of, deliveries, people you'd have coming. For special use, I do see what you're saying, that the Class B is not listed in the R1, however, it is listed in the R2. Does anybody have any thoughts on this? Any objection to including it as a special use in the R1 under commercial, Class B? So that would mean if you wanted to open up a small home business office and you have 2 employees who do, let's just say, admin and filing work for you, and you have a couple clients who come throughout the day, this would allow for you to apply for it by a special use permit in the R1.
I can't think of any immediate objection to that.
Okay.
I just found the duplex, though, and the reason I didn't find it earlier is because they reversed the wording. It's an allowable use in the R1, but instead of listing it as dwelling 2-family, they've got it as 2-family dwelling. So do we want to put duplexes in the R2?
Let's put I think my recommendation right now for housing, let's put a big question mark and
Okay.
come back to all the definitions and how, I do see now how they've reworded or flipped the language so it is not as clear. Because I think what we're also going to want to do is come in here and strictly define what a condominium is versus an apartment. We
Okay.
get that question a lot by developers. So let's come back to housing in general. Okay, so I will denote to add Class B to special use permit in the R1. Are there any other special uses or by right uses to discuss, talk about, remove from that R2? Nope, okay. So this will be a good spot to talk about and then kind of send you guys home with some homework to come back for next month. The transitional commercial district. So this has been an issue in the zoning ordinance because in 2018 we had 3 properties right along Washington Street be rezoned to transitional commercial. We have transitional commercial in our zoning ordinance. However, what we do not have is we do not have all of the parking, landscaping, signage, all of those areas clearly defined for the transitional commercial. So when our most recent developer came in, we had to work with them closely to get things to work out with the property, what he was required to do, what he was not required to do. So one of the things I want everybody to look at closely is what uses we allow by right, what uses we allow by special use permit, if there are any that should be removed or added, if there's any that you would like better defined. And then I will go through and I will pull together some recommendations for landscaping, buffer areas. We'll make sure that our setbacks look good. The buffer areas are appropriate. These are transitional commercial for our newer members. This is an area that's going to back up most likely to a residential neighborhood or a residential property, and it's going to help us blend from residential into the commercial areas. So it's okay to have the quieter commercial uses or the ones that maybe are primarily during the daytime. You do have some exceptions here. And then really what you want is you want it to blend nicely into your residential. So you don't want a lot of nighttime use. You don't want a lot of disturbance. Another thing we need to look at is landscaping and buffering and how this helps protect our residential neighborhoods. I think right off the bat, we can strike, grocery store, neighborhood convenience store, a general restaurant. I don't think we want to get into having larger scale restaurants on these properties. Again, we're really looking for what's a quiet use to blend the neighborhoods.
Greenhouse commercial to that now that I think about it. Given the potential, the size, the smell, the traffic,
Fertilizer.
there's no objection.
Isn't general store pretty much a grocery store too?
No, we have actually, grocery stores actually better defined because of the
Yes.
square footage requirements.
General store, and I made a note on here that is a good question to bring up. We need a better definition for this. So this is something that we need to better define. What is Do we want to separate what a retail store is? Do we want to get into the nitty-gritty of a boutique retail store versus, you know, other types of retail? So that's something, I'll come back to you guys with a couple ideas on our store general. I think we may also want to look at striking possibly nursing home or life care facility. I have to see how they're defined. The way I would interpret these is a larger scale use of a larger nursing home.
Just pull it up real quick.
It is residential, so, you know, if this is a transitional commercial area, we can leave that, but that's something else we might want to look into.
Yeah, you're right on,
Yes.
you're right on life care. What was the other one?
Notice that there's,
Nursing home.
I don't see a section for by right for R2. Is there a section of that? No. Is there nothing that's permitted by right for a R2?
So,
Looks like we go straight from, you know, it's a special use permit for R2.
okay, so to clarify, and I apologize, I should have clarified this earlier for everybody. So the word document is, I would call it, to make the most sense, a notes page. So if you pull up the zoning ordinance and then you pull up this Word document side by side, what you're going to see is where we've made edits, they're on the Word document. We did not pull every single page over, because that would be about 150 pages. So we just pulled out certain areas that we had started working on. If it is, yeah, if it's easiest for the next version of it, I can download the whole ordinance. It will be a much bigger file, and I can go through and make those edits on there, if that's what you guys prefer. I don't mind.
Yeah, I think that's going to take us a little longer to navigate through the, you know, comprehensive document. So, in my opinion, I think this approach works better.
Okay, I figured we'd start with this, and then as we get our way towards a more finalized round of edits, then I'll put it into the bigger document and make the necessary comments, and we can kind of go from there at that stage.
I just looked at the definitions for nursing and life care, and yeah, I think those
Should be removed.
probably, that's far too an intensive use for, and the size of the transitional parcel that you would require no longer exists. The only place that would have fit would have been where they're putting the townhouses in.
Yes.
So I've got no issue with taking those out.
Okay. So that everybody's familiar with the few that we do have in town, where Aroma 2 sits, and then working east, the next brick building, which is a small office for a roofing company, and then the White House on the corner of St. Paul and Washington. Those are our 3 transitional commercial properties at this time. Not to say somebody couldn't file for a rezoning and change their zoning, but those are the 3 we currently have.
How about that big property that's a street over from those properties that you mentioned? I forget the lady that, you know, attends most of the planning commission meeting. I think she, is that zone commercial currently?
So the property directly across from Aroma 2 that is undeveloped right now, that's the Van Meter property for Robinson Village. There is another property a little bit further down that's across from the park that you might be referencing.
Yes, that's the one I'm referring to.
That one is Zone B1. Okay, so since we're about to switch over to our regular meeting, I'm going to stop here for tonight. So if everybody,
You want to take care of the last section of TC, commercial and residential?
yes, sure.
I would add to the deletions garden center on the commercial.
Okay, I have garden center, commercial, nursing, life care facility. We're gonna better define store general. I think restaurant mobile's gonna come back up when later on in the document I want to discuss food trucks. So maybe you guys start giving that some thought, keep it in the back of your mind, how that would affect our current businesses we have here now and how we can incorporate some of that food truck movement that everybody really likes. I'm going to look back at communication services and consumer repair services, how those are defined if we want to leave them. As for special uses, we have struck two-family dwelling. Again, we'll come back to dwellings. I recommend removing a recycling center. I don't think at this time, the way it's defined, a recycling center would work as well in a transitional commercial district. And we also have in the commercial, again, special uses, removing automobile repair service, cemetery, hotel. Let's see. Alexander put in 2 comments. One on commercial outdoor sports and recreation. Is this something that the town could accommodate based on suitable land and infrastructure availability and limitations?
Not any longer.
Yeah, not any longer, so that might be something we look at striking a couple of those. And then a halfway house, he put a comment, would the town and residents be comfortable with this? I don't know that we per se have the space anymore for that. And then do we want to remove garden center as well?
If we're gonna take out a greenhouse, we might as well take out the garden center.
Does anybody have any questions for me on the ZTA? If you guys will, I do want to schedule another work session for this so we can continue to work through it. I think the time before the meeting works. We can also schedule a separate meeting as well as necessary. But in the meantime, if everybody could just, keep reading through, you can kind of see some of our discussion of what we're looking at doing, some of the areas of concern. Do your comparison, pull up the ordinance and kind of go through our working document. If you have additional comments, please send them to me. You can always email me or call me. We can set up a meeting to discuss any questions or concerns that you may have. I'm happy to explain any of this and we can work through it. Also, as you see things, kind of as Marchant did and we discussed here tonight, as you see areas to pull aside for comp plan discussion, make a note of that and what you want future planning of the town to look like so that we can be sure to have a productive comp plan discussion as well. So with that, we can go ahead and end our work session and switch over to regular. Do we need a couple minute break?
Oh, move to adjourn.
Okay.
All right, do I have a motion to adjourn? Second?
Porter made the motion. Second, Mr. Howard?
Aye.
Okay.
All right, all in favor, say aye.
All right,
Aye, all right.
now you gotta reload.